Welcome to Debutante Renegade. My name is Aurora, and this is episode 1. We're going to begin with why the show is called Debutante Renegade. Why? Why am I Debutante Renegade? It has to do a little bit with my history, my upbringing. In some ways, I came from a privileged background, and in some ways, I came from the opposite. The debutante part is that privileged part, that part that had a very wealthy grandmother and spent the summers in the Hamptons with her and got to experience a certain type of lifestyle that not many people in the world ever get to experience. But that wasn't my entire childhood and existence. It was just a sliver of it. There were times where my brother and my mother and I were living in a small 1-bedroom apartment in a crappy part of Northern California, going to a terrible school where I got hit in the face on the bus and things like that happened. So my entire life wasn't privileged in that way, but I did definitely have some of that. And although all the women in my family have been debutantes, I was not a debutante. I did not have a debutante ball. I chose to go skydiving for my 18th birthday rather than have a debutante ball. And that's kind of the renegade part, and the love of actionable women and weapons and other badass things. That's where the renegade comes in, the rebellious nature. So I initially created the debutante renegade persona character. I think it started as kind of a Halloween costume, and then the concept I liked so much and I thought it was cool, I turned it into a film script that I wrote, a feature, a movie, which is really, it's kind of spooky almost what the movie's about. It's about this girl, this woman who finds out about this pharmaceutical trial of this vaccine that has a really terrible adverse effect. It causes MS, multiple sclerosis, and this person very close to her gets it from the vaccine trial. However, this vaccine is set to be mandated in the state of California. It's a mandated flu vaccine. And so this character, Debutante Renegade, has to take down the head of this pharmaceutical company and bring down the pharmaceutical company and stop the mandate in order to kind of save the day. I just think it's kind of interesting and kind of poignant for everything that's going on in our world today. But I'm not going to get into all that in episode 1. We're going to talk about some other stuff. But I just wanted to give an introduction into why it's called Debutante Renegade and why I'm Debutante Renegade. If you hear paws walking around, that's Thor. He's almost 13. He's kind of a wolf dog. Maybe at some point I'll post some pictures or video of him. He's geriatric, senile, very old, but still amazing. He's been the most amazing dog in the world. But you might hear him walking around. My apologies for the noise. There's also a bunny around here, but you won't hear the bunny hopping around. Not today, not in this episode. Disclaimers. This is episode 1, so I think it's important we get into some disclaimers. I do have a bit of a pirate potty mouth, so there will be swearing. There will be swearing. And there will be blood. There will be bad words. I will cuss. And I am going to talk about diets and exercise and things like that, and other things related to one's health. I am not a medical professional. I am not a scientist. I'm not an expert. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a personal trainer. I'm not any of those things. I'm not an expert. Don't take my advice unless that's something that you want to research on your own and do yourself. So I'm just going to talk and share my opinions and take it or leave it for what it is. But just know that I am not pretending to be an expert on anything. I have my own experience. I've done my own research on things, and that's where I'm coming from. So yeah, and same with any of the research that I do, any of the topics that I talk about, that, you know, I've done the best that I can do, and I found what I've found. That doesn't mean that everything I find is true or right or correct. Feel free to correct me. Feel free to bring me the truth. And that's another disclaimer. I will change my mind. I'm notorious for it. Anyone who's my friend or lives with me or spent a lot of time with me knows that I change my mind. I change my opinions. My mind is open and malleable. So, you can try to change it. You might not. But I will change it. My position is ever evolving. Although I think there are some things that are pretty solidified for me at the moment. But in general, I am capable of changing my mind. Oh yeah, and with the disclaimer on the health thing, like I'm not a therapist. I might give advice. I might have my own input. I've done a lot of reading into psychology and attachment theory, and I'm going to talk about those things on the show. But again, I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm not, offering advice from a professional standpoint. It's all just my opinion. And you're responsible for what you do with that. Oh, so, I will talk about diet a little bit. So like many during the pandemic, which, by the way, I live in Los Angeles, and we definitely had a lot of lockdown here. Things are still not back to normal, at least for me. Maybe some people feel like they are, but I don't. I did during the pandemic. I definitely gained weight. Like, I didn't weigh myself. I don't like weighing myself. I have like a naturally like muscular and curvy body, and I don't like weighing myself because it's always like higher than like what it should be. But I just have a different kind of body. That's not to say that it doesn't need improvements, because it definitely does. But it's just you can't hold everyone to the same standard. And I know that for myself. I know I can be very lean and still be like in the higher weight for my height, or be like slightly overweight for my height when I'm like, my body fat is low. So that's why I don't weigh myself. Anyway, I didn't weigh myself during the pandemic. Thank God. I probably would have cried, but I definitely gained weight, and I didn't really realize it until I decided to lose weight. And then I lost some weight, and I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, my clothes like were too tight and they weren't fitting, and now they're fitting again. And whoa, those cutoffs I bought over the summer are literally falling off my body now. So I'm going to talk about that for a minute. Weight loss, because I know that's something that everybody wants. Well, not everybody. Some people don't need to, right? But a lot of us are always trying. I started doing in August. I think it was like the end of August. I started doing keto. Now, I've done since my mid-20s low carbohydrate diets. Like, I would almost say I'm kind of an expert on it. I did paleo for the second half of my 20s, and the majority of my 30s. However, once I had my son and I was breastfeeding, yeah, by the way, I'm a mom of a 7-year-old. I got a 7-year-old. He's amazing. I'm also divorced. I was married. I'm divorced now. So those are some things about me, some personal deets. Those things might come up from time to time. Anyway, after I had my son, I was never able, I really struggled with losing weight. And it's interesting because I was one of those people that before I got pregnant and when I was pregnant, I had no sympathy for the people that couldn't get the baby weight off. I just thought they were lazy or not eating properly. And then once I was in that position, I'd given birth and I was breastfeeding, and I immediately jumped into the Whole30 diet and I started doing CrossFit and all these things that really should have worked for me, but they weren't. It just wasn't, nothing was working. It was just my hormones or how my body was reacting to the hormones of breastfeeding or, birth, whatever. I don't know exactly why I couldn't make any headway, but I couldn't. And it was, for me, a very teachable moment. And I don't judge people now because wherever somebody's at, you could look at them and you can make all kinds of assumptions. But wherever somebody's at, you have no idea what their journey is. You have no idea what they're doing, what they're not doing. Somebody could be trying really hard and being very disciplined, and they might not look like it. So I think it's really important not to judge and not to make assumptions about somebody's lifestyle based on their appearance. Because I remember at that time when my son was just a few months old, I remember being in the nail salon and getting my nails done. And the woman was like, you have such a pretty face. She was like, why don't you put your son in the stroller and go around the block a few times? And I remember feeling so insulted because I was like, going on the block a few times. I do CrossFit. I run like miles and lift like huge barbells and do like 100 like pull-ups. Of course, I was using a rubber band, but I was still doing it. And it just felt so insulting. Like she was just making an assumption that I looked a different way, so I must not be active. I must not be doing something, or I'm overeating. But I was eating really healthy and I was working out a lot. I just didn't look the way people would assume. And yeah, it was really pretty triggering and insulting. But again, important not to make assumptions. And I started to do an accent just then. I do accents, like I'll do every kind of accent. So I'm not actually being a racist, but if you want to call me one, then that's your prerogative. I'm going to do all kinds of accents. So just get used to it. Yeah. So with the keto that I started in August, I actually did it a little differently too, because I felt like, with the breastfeeding thing, I've had like a hormone issue for a while. I wasn't eating dairy with it. I did like really strict, like super low carb and no dairy, which was very limiting. I could just have like, meats, like proteins and nuts and seeds and vegetables. And that was it. That's all I could have. But it finally worked. Like something finally worked. That was like, so I would say, this isn't my advice, but I'm just saying for me, like nothing else worked that did. If you're struggling, you could look into keto, and specifically, if regular keto doesn't work, one could try dairy-free keto. And with that, I did start eating dairy again over the holidays, and I took like a month break from keto for health reasons. Like I ended up having some stuff come up. I'll talk about that another time. But I did start eating dairy again, but now I'm going off of it, or just I'm just going to have it really limited, like maybe once a week, twice a week, just not a lot, because it's really easy when you're doing keto to eat a lot of dairy. And I think dairy is inflammatory, and it's got hormones in it. It comes from an animal. It's to make a baby calf grow big. So it can be counterproductive to weight loss. And so that's been my keto journey so far. I've kind of plateaued for, I want to say, the last couple months. I think I'm just starting to get to the other side of the plateau, and I have a goal. I only have a month and a half, but for my birthday, March 13th, I want to be able to fit my pre-pregnancy pants, my pre-pregnancy jeans. That's my goal. So we'll see if I get there. My child is 7.5 years old. So it's been a little slow going here, but trying to make it happen. Better late than never. I'm trying. Before I talk about Mandela Effect, I might just do some relationship venting. I do have a boyfriend, and he's amazing, and I love him. And in a lot of ways, I feel like I could live the rest of my life with him. But, like no relationship's perfect, right? And we definitely have some issues. But sometimes, like last night, and I might just be feeling sensitive. It's my moon time. I'm very sensitive around that time. TMI, I know, but I'm gonna overshare. And I'm also gross about sex stuff. I'll probably talk about that too. So sorry. If you don't like that, then listen to somebody else talk. But yeah, I get a little more sensitive, emotional, maybe a little fiery tempered around my moon time, which is my period, for those of you who don't know, when I'm bleeding out of my vagina. Yeah, I said it. Did I lose you? Okay, bye. Good riddance. No, but I feel more sensitive, and I just I'm a really lovey, affectionate person, and I want a lot of love and affection. And I felt last night my boyfriend and we watched a movie, and after I just wanted to go to bed and snuggle and just have some love. A few nights ago, we had this really amazing conversation before bed. It was so fun. It was old times, what made us fall in love with each other, talking about really interesting things. Actually, we were talking about Mandela Effect, which is why I want to talk about that. But anyway, last night I was going to bed, and I was like, you coming to bed? You want to come snuggle? And he was just no, I'm gonna play guitar. And I was okay, good night. Hoping that there would be some affection there, but there was nothing. No affection, no cuddles, and I felt so unloved. I don't know. Do you ever feel that way? The person that you're with just doesn't love you? I don't know. I'm also I'm an anxious partner. I need love and reassurance, or at least I feel like I need love and reassurance, and I have to do all these things to trick myself into feeling secure and whole, and I don't need anybody, but I do. I really don't want to be needy, a needy mess. I'm I really have done a lot of work, so I'm not totally a needy mess, but I'm a lover and a snuggler and a kisser, and I do just affection and love. It feels good, There's so much garbage in our world. There's just so many daily dumpster fires, and I just, I want a little bit of the good stuff, which is the love. I just want that affection. And it's hard not to take it personally when it's denied, right? Like, instead of just being able to be like, oh, well, he's in a mood and sort of letting that go and dismissing it, I like take it personally. I'm like, I'm not lovable. I'm not good enough. What's wrong with me? Why doesn't he want to love me? It's emotional triage to the rescue. They're coming for me. Anyway, yeah, that was what happened last night. I don't know if you ever feel that way, where the person that you love, that you desire affection from, just denies you of it. And then instead of just being like, oh, well, they're in a mood, whatever, moving on, where you just like internalize it and feel all hurt and take it personally, like there's something wrong with you. Because really, like, from a rational perspective, I know that it's not me. I'm just like, hi, like, like, love. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong, you know? It's not like I've done something, so I, like, deserve some punishment or something. I just being loving. And if he's just being cold and dismissive, that's his own, you know, that's his own stuff. But somehow, you know, why are we always doing that? We're always taking other people's stuff personally. I know I am, and I'm probably saying way too much. I'll work on that. I promise. I'll get better. Moving on. Mandela Effect. Who's heard of the Mandela Effect? Who knows what that is? The Mandela Effect is basically this theory, and I think it started because there's been some, like, this interesting occurrence around the death of Mandela, being that there's like a whole sect of our society, like a huge, massive group of people that collectively remembers Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. Like, you know, you have that memory. Like, I have that memory. Like, I remember being a little kid and hearing from my parents that this incredible man died in prison, and then it was sad, and this whole thing. Like, so, like, there's all these people that have this memory, myself included. However, there's also this memory of Nelson Mandela becoming president and dying, and, like, I don't know if it was, I could look it up, but it's like 2009, 2013, something like that. Dying years later, like getting out of prison, becoming president, and then dying years later. So it's like this like weird thing. And it's called the Mandela Effect, this concept that a huge number of people have this memory of something, but when you look at the history books, like, it went down differently. And there's like a lot of kind of like weird, stupid things that fall into this, like the fruit of the loom symbol. Who remembers the fruit of the loom symbol having a cornucopia? Well, I do, but like they're saying that it never did. They're saying that Ed McMahon was never the Publishers Clearinghouse spokesperson with the big checks, and yet, like, a huge portion of us remember Ed McMahon doing the Publishers Clearinghouse commercials with those big checks. But they're saying he was never associated with Publishers Clearinghouse, and then that wasn't him. But a ton of people remember this. The interesting thing about that Ed McMahon one, this gets interesting here, is there's an episode of Golden Girls where Rose is on the phone and she talks about Ed McMahon showing up with a Publishers Clearinghouse check. So that's like some tangible evidence to kind of support this theory, because what they're saying is that, like, all these people collectively have wrong memory. Like, you just remembered it wrong. And like, when I first with the Mandela thing, I just thought for the longest time, I remember thinking like, I thought he died in prison, but then he like became president and died later. And I just thought like, I remembered it wrong. But then I've learned about these other things. There's also like the Berenstain Bears thing, how that's remembered. Shaggy from Scooby-Doo having an Adam's apple. He doesn't have an Adam's apple. Supposedly he never did. Yet a lot of us remember that. The Raisin Bran box, another Mandela Effect thing, is the Raisin Bran box. 2 scoops Raisin Bran. The son wore sunglasses, right? Like I remember what they looked like. They were like black, like Ray-Ban looking sunglasses. No, never. That son never wore sunglasses. So they say. So those are just some examples. I think it's interesting. I wonder, the kind of skeptic, renegade, conspiracy theorist that I can be. I've been thinking about it, and my boyfriend and I were talking about it. Like, what could this be? Like, why do all of us have? Another one. This one's really good too. The Monopoly guy having a monocle. They're saying that he never had a monocle. Huge collective of the population remembers there being a monocle, myself included, and yet they're saying that there was no monocle. So I've come up with 2 explanations for this. The technical explanation is that we all collectively have faulty memory and we're remembering wrong. That is the current explanation, but I have two other theories that I think are interesting. The first theory is maybe more plausible than the second theory. Second theory, I think, is more interesting. The first theory is that it's a psychological operation that I don't know what branch of what it would be that would run such a psychological operation on the population to see, what we can be made to believe, or essentially it would be kind of like a psyop in changing history, but like using small things as an experiment, like the Raisin Bran son and the sunglasses and the Monopoly monocle and the Fruit of the Loom cornucopia, sort of erasing these things and being like, it never was that way. Like, you're remembering it wrong. Because, if that were proven effective, I think it could be used, for more nefarious purposes in terms of erasing histories or changing history. Because really, what I've discovered in the last couple of years is like, it's really all about the narrative. So you create the right narrative, you create the right history, then you have a certain kind of power. Anyway, so one theory that I have is that it could be this psychological operation. I don't know if it would be like a CIA thing or a military thing or some other secret branch that I don't know the name of and I've never even heard of, but that it could be this sort of psychological operation on our society, on our culture, or on, a particular group of us who grew up at a certain time, who have a certain memory of these things. And now we're being told that memory is inaccurate. Actually, no, I have like 3 theories. The other could be, so that's like one, like it's a psychological operation where they're like, being like, yeah, it was never like this, but like it was like that. And they're just trying to convince us that like our memories are wrong. So that we'll be like, oh, I guess we're not remembering that correctly. Like our memory is fallible and like we can't trust what we think, or I don't know, but something to that effect. It could also be like, like there are other dimensions, right? So space-time, other dimensions. Like maybe at a certain point, a huge number of us were living in one dimension and we kind of switched over into another. And so we're remembering from our past, like parallel dimension. I'm talking parallel dimensions, obviously. Parallel dimensions, parallel universes. So maybe, we were all, born into one dimension and then we kind of clicked over into another one. And in this dimension, the Fruit of the Loom cornucopia didn't have the horn. But the one thing that's interesting is like, what was Golden Girls also in that last dimension with us? And now it like switched over. The Monopoly guy doesn't have a monocle, and the Raisin Bran son never had sunglasses. So that's also, if it's possible for one to switch dimensions, then that would be an explanation. That there's a theory. Now, I was calling it second theory, but I guess really it's my third theory, I think is the most implausible, but still plausible, and also the most interesting. And that is that if somehow, like via CERN, which is the Large Hadron Particle Collider in Switzerland, where they're practicing accelerating particles at the speed of light or faster. And supposedly, like at one point, they were able to get a particle to go faster than the speed of light. And then that scientist that talked about that got fired, and they said that they didn't, or I don't know. Anyway, theoretically, if a particle or an object could travel faster than the speed of light, then it could go back in time. It could time travel. And that's like theoretical physics, right? But say, at CERN or some other particle accelerator, they discovered the ability to travel faster than the speed of light, and time travel is a thing. Like we've maybe figured it out. And who knows if we'll ever figure it out? Who knows if we have already figured it out? It's just like fun thinking about this stuff. Like I love thinking about this stuff. I think it's interesting. It's like fun to ponder, right? So if we have figured out some kind of time travel, then theoretically someone could go back and tamper with things, like take the sunglasses off the box of Raisin Brans, take the monocle off of the Monopoly guy, take the cornucopia off of the Fruit of the Loom underwear, take Shaggy's Adam apple away. Like these are all small things. This isn't like changing the course of history stuff here. This is like small potatoes, like things just to see, like, like if I were going to experiment with time travel, that would be exactly what I would do first. Like let's just go back and like do some little things and like see how that affects stuff, like see how that changes things. And those are like such tiny things. Like they don't really change the course of history. The only interesting thing is you might look back and be like, there's no evidence to show that Raisin Bran box ever had the sun. Like I can't find, like I remember it having, but now when I go back and I find this like vintage box that's like dated in the 80s at a thrift store, it doesn't have the sunglasses. Like, I don't understand. That's so crazy. Because like, that's how it would work if there was time travel, right? Like it would actually have been changed. But the only thing that you can't change with time travel is memory, right? Like the people who were there, who remember it differently, like our collective memory, our memories. Like that's the one thing you wouldn't be able to change, which I think is really, with all the time travel films that I've seen, that's the one concept that I don't think I've ever seen executed in one. And I think it's so interesting, this idea that you could go back and you could change time and you could change the way things happened. But you can't change people's memories, you know, unless they're there at that moment that it's being changed and then they remember it differently, you know. But it's like you go back and like our memories are still on the trajectory that they're on. So I just think it's really interesting, like that we would still, that's like one weird, like the memory is maybe the only thing that could transcend time travel. Like you could change matter, but the memory just can't be changed. Something like that. I just think it's interesting to think about, because you would think that the memory would change too, but what if it didn't? What if the memory, you know, continued, is because it was always on that path? Even if the matter changed, the memory is the same. Can't be changed. Anyway, I just think it's interesting to ponder. So I don't know, have we figured out time travel? Are we living in a parallel dimension? Is there a psychological operation going on whereby they want us to remember things in a different way? Or, you know, where we can be convinced that our memories are wrong? Anyway, it's all interesting to think about. So I would love to hear people's theories or what you've uncovered about Mandela Effect, what you think. Do you think it's just, you know, bullshit? Like we're all just collectively misremembering? Do you think that it's a psychological operation? Do you think that we've switched over into a different dimension? Do you think that we've discovered time travel and started messing with things in the past? But the one thing that can't be changed is memory. Anyway, interesting stuff to think about. So that concludes episode 1, Debutante Renegade. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe. Get that, I send you good karma and blessings for subscribing. Please subscribe. I will do my best to do 2 to 3 videos, podcasts per week, 2 to 3 episodes per week, talking about different things. If you have any topic you want to talk about, just leave it in the comments below. Yeah. And if you want to give me your theories on Mandela Effect, please put those in the comments as well, because I'm super curious what other people think, theorize, and have discovered. Because I really haven't gone down the rabbit hole with that. I just was thinking about it. And I need to go down the rabbit hole, investigate that one further. Anyway, have a beautiful rest of your day, night, whatever you're doing. Wongly woo worried that his really was to we. You're welcome. I just made that up. Wally woo worried that his really was to we. Wally woo worried that his really was to we. That's a good one.